Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the next edition of the Community Leadership Series. So the Community Leadership Series is a series of online events where we look at different stages or different parts of the community journey. You may be here representing a specific organization or community. You may be a leader in a specific group, or you could just come in your own identity, and that's cool too. I hope that this evening will be reflective and meaningful one for you, and that you'll be able to learn applicable things that you can apply into your own lives and your own context as well. So I'm Grace, I'm the host for today. If you have any questions at all, just feel free to pop them in the chat or message any of the co-hosts. So I'm part of NVPC's Community Matters team, and our team's vision is really to see flourishing communities of leaders who strengthen society in Singapore. And how we do this is by organizing a variety of activities and creating resources such as like this event tonight for you to connect with other community leaders and learn and share with one another. I'm gonna begin with talking about some definitions for today, so we can kind of anchor ourselves into the overview of like this session. So this session is called the Community Leadership Series, right? And a question that we often get is, what is a community? Because there's so many different ways to define community and to slice and dice this concept. But fundamentally, a community is just a group of people with something in common. There are lots of different ways in which you can categorize a community. So you can categorize, think about this in your own personal life, right? You might have hobbies or interests. There may be different causes that you advocate for, or you follow on social media, or you're involved in actively as a volunteer for. You may potentially even be working to advocate for some of these causes. We are also part of different identity-based communities that may be related to like our age, our ethnicity, our religion. And communities can also be categorized by skills, or think about, let's say, a workplace, right? It could be like a workplace community, it could be a team community. You could also think about it in your neighborhood, like your block, your floor, the region that you're part of. So, yeah, so there's lots of different ways that you can categorize community. But I hope that this explanation kind of gives you a kind of a better sense of like, when we talk about community, what are we referring to? At the end of the day, it's also up for you to define, because some people may feel a sense of affiliation or belonging with some community, while another person may not. Yes, and so communities have goals and purposes, and these goals may be internal, related to the relationships between members, or external, related to kind of the impact that they're making beyond themselves. Communities are made up of people who fundamentally are in relationship with one another. And this could look like how we give and receive from people in our community. And also that community members are very diverse, right? Different people have different inclinations, different backgrounds, different stories, different experiences. But together, they are all on a different journey of their own. Yes, so I'm just gonna open the time now for some introductions in the chat. So I'd like to invite everybody here who is listening to me talk to just share in the chat a bit about yourself, like what is your name, what is a community that you are here today in mind. And this is helpful so that as the session goes along, when we go into the breakout rooms and you meet other people and have conversations with them, at least you can kind of anchor yourself in a certain community. It can be a community related to your personal life. So if you're here and you don't want to talk about your work, you don't want to think about work, you can talk about like your yoga community, or your, I don't know, all the sports communities in my mind, your basketball community, your gardening community. But yes, so do use the chat now to introduce yourself. Hello, Gladys from YWCA. Hi, Daniel from Singapore Cancer Society. Hello, Jay from Impact. Oh, okay, all the messages are suddenly flooding in. Okay, wow, we have like 110 participants in here. Thanks everyone for being here. If you just joined us, you just joined the call and you're a bit confused about what's happening, you're introducing yourselves in the chat. And what you missed right before this was just me introducing the session today. Yeah. So yeah, in the meantime, have a read of the people in the chat. Get a sense of like who else is in the room. If you see an interesting profile, feel free to direct message them and get to know them. I hope the chat doesn't flood too fast. But yeah, I mean, if there's someone who catches your eye or it's from an organization that you'd be interested to like connect with further, just feel free to direct message them through the chat. So I'm gonna explain the program overview for today. Right now we are in the main room and we'll be here for a couple more minutes for the introductions. Then we're gonna go into the breakout rooms. We'll have 30 minutes for you to get to know other participants and to share stories with one another and to connect further. We'll come back to the main room for the main group share back before moving on into the panel discussion. We have a really awesome group of panelists today, so I hope that you can stay all the way to the end. And finally, we'll close the session back in your breakout rooms. So the reason why we decided to close the session in your breakout rooms is also for you to have some time with the people that you met earlier in your breakout rooms to process and digest everything that's gone on today. And also if you do have like more things that you want to talk about after 9 o'clock, we will close all the breakout rooms at 9:15. But rest assured, we will be done officially at 9 o'clock. So you have to go off, feel free to go off. Also because a big part of the session takes place in breakout rooms today, if you do need to like leave midway or leave earlier, do let your facilitators know so that they're not waiting for you at the end when we come back into the breakout room for the wrap-ups. Yep, so that's the program outline. And yeah, I'm gonna share a bit more about understanding the concept of community journey before we move into the breakout rooms. So today's session is looking at the onboarding phase, right? And often, I guess, it's not really a phase that many people think about. So the idea of the community journey is that there's more or less a journey, right, that a person takes through a community. So what you see on this slide kind of charts out possible pathways that a person goes through in a community, but this is not necessarily a linear process. Okay, so as you see here, there's recruitment, selection, and then there's onboarding. The experience part looks at the different elements of being involved in community life. So it could be ways in which a person may participate, contribute, perhaps take up like development opportunities like trainings, or step up into a leadership process, a leadership role in a community. Finally, before exiting, leaving the community, perhaps even coming back as an alumni or transiting into another community. For today's session, we'll be looking at the entry phase. But if you're interested in future sessions, our next session, which will be happening next month on the 25th of September, we'll be looking at leadership and the idea of leadership succession. So if you're curious about that, feel free to sign up for that session too. We'll put the link in the chat at the end of the session. But today, we are here for onboarding. So without further ado, let's talk a bit about onboarding. Invite all of you to scan the QR code here and go to this slide. It's a Mentimeter. I think many of you are familiar with Mentimeter. And the question is, what is onboarding to you? So yes, please go to this slide and then we will open it up in a bit. Atin, do you want to share the Mentimeter? All right. All right, so what is onboarding to you? Some of the key things that people say, orientation is a huge one. The idea of a welcome, it's the point in time when you welcome new members into a community, familiarization, acclimatization, the start of the journey, First impressions. Connectedness. New people. Okay, setting expectations is increasingly increasing. Oh no, it went down again. Culture is also increasing. Finding ways to contribute and participate. Intro session, setting the tone. Psychological safety, super important. Okay, no, our onboarding is super important. Blending in, building confidence, understanding the goal of the community. All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing your thoughts about what onboarding means to you. I guess we can see that like some of the commonalities across all of the different inputs that all of you have. Now we're going to go into the breakout rooms. So this is really the time for you to get to know other people. In this call today, I think you saw in the chat, like it's lots of very interesting people in the session today. Yeah, so what we'll be doing in the breakout rooms is we'll just be getting to know each other and then having a time of sharing, followed by a group share back when we come to the main room. So the discussion questions for today are the first main two, but if you have additional time in your group, you can go on to additional questions. So the first question is about personal experiences in onboarding. You know, like what were some of the positive experiences you've had before in your own life? From another community, could even be the community you're here representing. And then the second discussion question, it might be flipped around depending on how your facilitator chooses to organize the session. And the second question is, how is onboarding done in your community? Yes. Additional questions are like, what are some challenges you may have faced? How effective is onboarding? Or, what does success look like in onboarding? But we will leave that to you and the flow of the conversation in your breakout room, because every breakout room will be different depending on who's in your breakout room. So yes, right before we go into the breakout rooms, we're just gonna do like a quick photo taking since we have everyone here now. So please turn on your video and we will take group photos before we go into the breakout rooms of the group discussion. So we will have each vessel share for about 2 to 3 minutes, 3 minutes max. Yeah, so I'd like to invite Vina to go first. You can share your slide if you want, or you can just talk. Leave it up to you.
Hello. How about I just talk? I think the slides are quite wordy.
Sure.
So we had a good mix of people in our group who were involved in a lot of volunteering societies and organizations. So there was a lot of talk about volunteer onboarding. Also groups that work with young adults, youth, and children. So something that we found in common. So we were talking so much that we didn't get to finish. Okay, sorry, but it was a great conversation. So something that I think we found in general was that a lot of our great onboarding experiences focus on building one-to-one relationships between the people in the organization. So there's a lot of bringing each other out for meals, of taking the time in your schedule to meet people. There's some organizations that have organized system to connect volunteers or staff with one another. And these things really help to promote a working environment or a volunteering environment that is, I guess, has more trust and just a bit more productive as well. So that was a common theme that we all kind of found. In terms of a good personal experience, the similar kind of thing, we had a cool case of senior volunteer. So in an organization that usually works with younger people, a senior volunteer that came on board, and how that one person kind of played this role of almost a motherly role, a big sister kind of role that was very, I guess, very encouraging and very comforting to the new volunteers, but also to help people who were a bit older who never considered volunteering in the first place to come on board as well. And something else we also had was a training experience that involved like a kind of shared action. So this was a pre-COVID training that allowed everyone to come together at the end of a training session to it involved, if I'm not wrong, like a stone, and your stone was symbolic of a wish or a goal or a dream that you had, and everyone would put it into some water, I think, and then there was a moment of like silence and reflectiveness, and that kind of shared experience I think was quite meaningful to the people in that onboarding experience, and helped to kind of set the tone for them working together going forward. Yeah, that was fast.
Thanks, Fina. I'm up next, and I had a really like a rich conversation with really interesting people who will scream at me on the chat or on their screens if I say anything, if I can't summarize properly what we talked about. I think onboarding plays a really important role of acclimatizing volunteers to be into the vision and mission of the organization, to imbue them with that sense of purpose, and help them understand the cause, the specific cause, and the landscape around that cause. So whether it's sharing relevant articles of the migrant workers landscape in onboarding, during the onboarding briefing, or helping them understand the sort of guidelines, the do's and don'ts of interacting with kidney dialysis patients, that's really just to build up their confidence and sense of purpose as they are about to begin volunteering. That was shared among my group participants. There were some differences. I think the differences are quite important. So differences between onboarding processes pre-COVID and during COVID, how the whole sort of virtual, the need to move to virtual affected. Maybe you can't do team bonding events anymore. There are less opportunities for volunteers to find kakis and to find friends that they can sort of encourage each other to volunteer. There are different groups of volunteers. You might have skills-based volunteers. You might have senior business leaders advising in a volunteering capacity, or you might have general volunteers, and the orientation programs, onboarding programs, and processes have to sort of be tailored to those different kinds of groups of volunteers. And lastly, obviously, there are different causes, and so the information and the types of information and that you share with potential volunteers or volunteers to be, that is also to be tailored. In terms of positive experiences, the nature of communication is really important. So those staff members doing the orientation and onboarding, they have to come across as authentic. That communication has to be two-way, it has to be in an equal fashion. And that really builds up the confidence of the volunteer, that they know that they're in the right organization, and that maybe even after volunteering for this organization, they may carry on and volunteer for 2 more. So yeah, who's next, Chris?
Oh, next is me. Yeah, so I mean, just to add on, I think one other thought that came up in my group was about how do we handle inactive volunteers, and the importance of even at the start being able to kind of communicate those expectations, be it by kind of setting milestones or even talking about and the consequences if someone's inactive, because sometimes just not knowing how to deal with people who are unresponsive. So at the very start, you can say that like, hey, this is what the journey would look like as you're communicating expectations, but also, if you're inactive or you don't come for like X number of things, then how you choose to deal with either like exiting this person or transiting them or just saying goodbye as a way to manage volunteers. Yeah, so I think that is that leads us to the close of the breakout room discussion time. I hope that you guys had a good conversation with your people in the breakout rooms. So we'll be going back into the breakout rooms after the panel discussion. And so now I'd like to introduce our panelists. Let me share my screen and share a bit more about the upcoming panel discussion, which will take us through the next 40 minutes or so. So the panel discussion has 2 parts. The first part is a bit of a structured Q&A, where we'll just be having a conversation with the panelists around some of these questions related to like some considerations on onboarding, tips and tricks, as well as how we can build better relationship between new members and existing members. And then we'll go into a time of open Q&A. So if at any point in time If you have a question for the panelists, feel free to prompt that in the chat and I will get to them, hopefully all of them if time permits, but we'll see how things go. So today we have three very awesome panelists. We have Shaily, Sparsh, and Woon. And I will leave them to introduce themselves one at a time. So firstly, sure, call on Sparsh. Hello, Sparsh.
Hi, Grace. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Yeah, so Sparsh, please share with us about who you are and your community. Yeah.
Sure, great. Thank you. So yeah, hi, everyone. I am part of a company called BHP. We are the largest mining and resources company in the world, and we have some presence in Singapore, so I'm part of that team. I have a day job where I'm a process improvement consultant within the company, but then I also have the privilege of managing a community, which is called the BHP Singapore community, where we have a volunteer network of our employees and contractors coming together to actually work on initiatives which allow us to serve our people within the company as well as the communities in Singapore. What you see here is I hope a picture speaks 1,000 words here, but pre-pandemic, we used to, of course, go together in large groups to conduct various different kind of activities with the different organizations across Singapore. All that have been happening in a very virtual model over the last 1.5 years. Showing that in pictures again, I think what you see is a picture where we did a virtual class for Club Rainbow, and all have been trying to pivot, right? This community has been trying to pivot to work in a very hybrid or a more of a virtual environment. The community plays a very important role for us here because we are all volunteers, 100% of it, including myself and the other community members that manage this community. And then we operate across very different pillars that you see here. We call it the active BHP, which is focusing on physical and mental wellness and getting people together to exercise for good causes. Celebration, which is engaging our employee workforce to actually engage in various different activities and feel the social element that we are missing. And then working with our support community partners. You see here in the logo here. So we have about 10 community partners who are there that we support on an annual basis. And again, all led through a volunteer effort by this team. As a limelight, I would call out that we managed to support about 26 initiatives in the last financial year, which again looked tough given the virtual nature and the pivot which was required on a regular basis. But super important that through this network, which is actually, when I say 50, it's about 1 in 10 employees in the office. It was made possible with all the support there to get the right funds associated from the organization, but also to ensure that the impact is going to the last mile for the children and the elderly that we are supporting for this cause. Great, it's a privilege to be here and looking forward to more discussion later.
Thanks, Sparsh.
Thanks, Grace.
Next up, we have Woon. Hello, Woon.
Hello, everyone. Hi, firstly, thank you for having me here today. And I really look forward to all the conversations we're going to have later. We did have very good conversations just now, so I'm going to extend that conversation with everyone. So by my previous day job was in the banking industry, so I wasn't actually in the area of social, but I do a lot of work in the social service sector. And from the time that I was in the banking, well, my first job, I started to do volunteering and all, and then we kind of when I actually left the banking industry, I started a group of volunteers. Ground Up Initiative actually started off as a Ground Up Initiative, and now we are actually a social enterprise. So what we aim to do is to connect good causes with good people, and in an aspiration to actually build a community of good people, good causes. So that's what we're trying to do. We connect the dots, and then we want everybody to be able to enjoy it. So that's me. So far, we have about really fortunate. We have about 1,000 volunteers since we first started. We have on and off people come and help us. You may see them every single month. You may not see them you might see them every other year, but we are very blessed that a lot of them remember us and come back to volunteer whenever they have time. So that's from me, Volunteer Switchboard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Shaily. Hello, Shaily.
Sorry,
Yes.
I was on mute. So hi, everyone. As a day job, I've been an HR professional for many years. Now I run my own HR consulting firm where I talk about, how to lead in a virtual environment. I'm a certified executive coach. Just like Woon, I was in banking, for many years, for almost 12 years. I was a head of HR for various banks. And my last 5 years had been in consulting, Deloitte Consulting and PwC Singapore. From a community perspective, I'm also a board committee member with NVPC and also on the board of a company called Tita Matra, which is to kind of express the voice of minorities through art form. But large part of my onboarding experience that I would talk about today is what we do in the professional world, which is in the corporate world, which is very similar. In my mind, the basic framework and the fundamental is very, very similar to what needs to be done in community, because the concerns and how you're anxious about it is just the same. Human beings feel the same level of uncertainty when they join any new community or a new corporate. So my experience sharing today, I would share with you, is more from the corporate environment, and if there are any learnings that you could carry it, for the community in general. Thank you.
So my first question actually is directed to you, which is from an HR perspective, what are some key considerations in onboarding?
Yeah, very good, Grace. How I look at it is that when anybody is joining a new community or a new organization, put yourself in their shoe. So there are 3 concerns that you're dealing with, which I call 3P. The first concern that I have is that I had very good set of friends in that neighborhood or in my previous organization. Will I be able to make new friends in a new place? Would I have trusted friends whom I can hang around with? So people and the social network is my big concern when you join any new community. So anybody joining your community, that's the concern that they walk in with. The second is, how does this community work? How does this corporate work? Because I was known for some amount of my work in the previous organization. I was a great performer there. That's the reason you hired me. But now that when I've come in this new organization, will I be able to understand your processes, your systems, and perform and participate with equal excellence? So my productivity, how am I going to engage with this community, becomes a concern. The third piece is my performance, my culture alignment. Are you going to come back and tell me this is not how we do it? This is not how my community does this, right? Or are you going to say that this is some of the ways, Shaily, let's apprise you of what is our culture so that you can align with it. So in my mind, any new joiner, who is joining your community is looking for a social network, is looking to be productive, and is looking to engage with you, is looking to fit in culturally, and if you can have your systems and processes, whether online and offline, to help them build this social network or to help them be productive or help them to participate with you or help them to culturally align, I think you would build a very harmonious community very soon. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thanks, Shaily. I'm just gonna pass the time over to Sparsh. Just want to hear your thoughts on this framework that Shaily has presented. Do you see this in your own community? I mean, how do you do onboarding in the BHP Singapore community?
Well, absolutely. I think it fits very well in terms of the key concerns, right? Because I think if I see this from a new team member perspective, as Shaily pointed out, these are the concerns, right? But if I then see it from someone who is recruiting or rather onboarding someone in the community, how do I actually, remove the doubts around it is extremely important for me. So cultural alignment, like we call it out as the purpose, right? So being upfront about what is the purpose of this community? Why do we want people to be in there, right? It's exceptionally important because that gives a very clear view to a new individual coming in, that whether he or she would like to be part of this or not. Productivity is similar, like having the right expectation of what kind of time or effort or role can they play in this community and is expected of them when they join this is again extremely important. And I guess if I hear it from Shaily, the person joining is also looking for the same clarity. So they won't be overwhelmed by it. I think it's up to the community then to make sure that as part of your onboarding process, you're actually removing those doubts. You're making it absolutely clear for them what the purpose is, aka cultural alignment that comes in there, what is expected on them from a role perspective, and then social network again is super critical. I see that as a good positive in some cases, because I think some of them do come through a social network into a new community, especially nowadays. Like, okay, I heard about it from a friend, and that's how I joined, for example, a cycling community because a friend was there and I went. So I think that bridge can be crossed easier, but certainly having clarity on productivity and purpose is key.
Thanks, Sparsh. What about you, Woon? Any thoughts?
So I did share with you guys just then, it's about previously in the banking, we have a very formal way of onboarding. So we have to step by step with every single, it's a huge structure. It's basically your paperwork and how you go in orientation and how you get to fit into the culture. So that entire thing, what has been shared with the three major concerns on people, process, performance, it will impact everything. So the people itself, the process, of course, we talk about the SOPs, what you do, how do you do it, everything else we need to share with them. If not, people will get very lost, especially when it comes to volunteering. You get people are lost. No matter how many times you tell them and brief them about via your emails to tell them with detailed instructions of what to do, they still come very blurred. So on the site itself, you still need to explain the process one more time to tell them exactly what they're doing so that it becomes, but I agree with Sparsh about the purpose. You need to go and talk about the purpose of what you want to do today so that it will let the people be able to link the process and performance together. Right, so that's very important. So the culture itself, when you talk about social network and culture alignment, people, just now I was sharing with the team, people is very important. They are basically the people that the topic of today, right? Inducting the new team members or integrating them into the same culture that you have. So when I asked the group of my group just then, I asked them, for example, when I actually go to the talk, I ask people, volunteers are ... You fill out the blanks. What are volunteers to you? Okay, different people tell me different things. People will tell me, oh, they are here to help me, okay, the organization to do the work. They will also tell, just now the sharing we had, they are the gems. People will say, oh, they are, they come and they go. So the first thing of is the impression of it makes a lot of difference. Because if you take them as the people come and go, so you treat them, the induction program or the onboarding process will be, people come and go, so I just do the necessary things. But you take that they are gems, they are here to help, then the way that your mindset will change and reframe the way that you treat the people and how you get them into the culture of your organization and how you get them into the social network, which means it's building relationships, right? I think the mindset itself is very important when you treat that. So when I ask people, volunteers are ... because when I actually go through the entire thing of how we treat the volunteers, people ask me also back, even so, volunteers are ... what are they to you? I'll tell them, volunteers are my people. So when I say they are my people, I'll treat them the way that I want to be treated. I will treat them with care, with respect, with integrity, with gratitude, with everything that I want to be treated. Right? And that will change the way that I build the relationship, how I build the social network. People will feel straight away because we're in the business of people, right? So they will feel whether they like you or they don't like you. It's, love at first sight, the impression at first sight. If they don't like you, that's it. You're not going to be there anymore. I hope that helps.
Shaily or Sparsh, anything to add on to that?
I guess every time or any time we are looking at designing the onboarding process, it's important to look at it from the point of view of what the new joiner, the person who's joining your community, is looking for. How can you make them comfortable? In my mind, it is always a journey, but with every touch point, if you can make that moment that matters for that person, the journey is going to be a very smooth ride. So look at every touch point of that new joiner and make it delightful. Look at it from the person's perspective and try to provide for them what they are looking for, what they are anxious about, what their concerns are. And faster you settle them, faster they are going to integrate with the larger community, in my mind. In corporate world, we usually say that if people do not settle down in their first 30 days or first 60 days, the chances of early attrition are very high. That's the reason HR world over spends a lot of time and energy on onboarding correctly across the world. You know, that's a money lost for you. That's an effort lost for you.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, definitely in our workplaces, we see the level of effort that HR puts into onboarding. And I guess that these same concepts and principles very much apply even to volunteering initiatives. Sparsh?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty fascinating conversation, right? I think at the time of onboarding, of course, it's important of what we think of volunteers ourselves. And I was just smiling a bit because we are BHP and our volunteer group, we call them big-hearted people, which actually one of the volunteers named the group themselves, which again is how we feel about our volunteers, right? They are the team actually who are doing it, right? Like we're all, the other committee members are just support system. But I think it's also important, and actually, Grace, when in the first slide you were showing the whole journey for volunteering, I thought there's an element that goes into the experience, which then comes back and supports you in onboarding, is the recognition. So while I do feel that in a lot of the community, their expectations are around selfless service, right? And that's super important. But then recognition goes a long way to have that movement that matters for existing volunteers and to create that for new volunteers as well. And in turn, actually raise that expectation ourselves on how we are treating and thinking about our volunteers as well, right? So I think that's what I felt that has been really meaningful for elevating the profile of the volunteers as well as onboarding new volunteers in the right way. So yeah. Could
you share a bit more about how that's done in BHP? That recognition portion.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I'll be upfront here. Of course, as a corporate community, we discourage people who want to join this so that they can get a dot point on the CV, right? We discourage people, or rather we call out, as I said, right, setting the expectation. We absolutely call out that if you're looking for a network, great, but if you're looking for a promotion, this is not the place to be, right? We are actually here for a purpose in a very selfless service environment. To deliver support, right? And people at all different levels of the organization then come together and all act as volunteers. So hierarchy doesn't really come into when you think about the volunteer network, which is important, right? They could be your manager in your day job, but as volunteers, we're all equals in how we are coming together to work, right? But then as part of the community itself, it's important to ensure that you're recognizing everyone's effort in the right forum when it's possible. So it could just be a thank you note. You know, it could be a voucher, it could be a support, depending on what the norms in the company are. It could just be a message to their one-up manager who's actually not even in Singapore, who's actually part of a global enterprise sitting somewhere else, but letting them know of the good work our volunteers are doing, right? Again, it's not an expectation that we set with the volunteer, one should never, but then it's just as simple as saying a thank you, right? Which is important. And that recognition will also enable yourself to see, or myself to see in this case, is the importance of that volunteer, right? Have that reflection, connect with them, and through that process, actually onboard new people because they enjoyed that experience, right? It's that exactly that moment that mattered to them, and they would probably welcome their friends to join as well.
That's a good point. I've already thought about that. It's also another opportunity for recruitment of future volunteers.
It absolutely is. It comes down to the experience, right? If I like it, I'll share it with others. If I don't, then even I won't show up next morning.
Yeah, totally agree. So just like we had the discussion, right? The onboarding experience, right? It doesn't stop at where the paperwork ends or you say hello and everything else, right? It's entire, maybe the first experience that you have, especially for the community that we work with, right? If they like you, the first impression counts, right? They like you a lot. They enjoy the first few interactions with you and enjoy the first experience. They want to come back. So I always get people to relate it back, right? To the restaurants that you think that is really amazing. Just now I was sharing with the group. You go to a restaurant, you pay for this and you go for the food. And of course, the food is amazing, but the experience is shit. I'm sorry, pardon me, it's recorded. But if that whole entire experience is terrible, you won't want to come back again, even no matter how good the food is. So it actually comes as a total package, how you've been treated and all. So like you say, being saying thank you at the end of the event, thank you for contributing, thank you for coming today, making time. And you really showed people that you genuinely are grateful for that. People want to come back. But at the same time, I also believe the whole entire experience must be seamless. It may look casual, right? It may look very casual. It may look like we didn't do anything. It just somehow another fall in seamlessly. But you must know behind the scenes, we're doing a lot of different things, very deliberately designing the entire process so that it will be seamless to you. I think that's a few things that we need to also remember. Today, volunteers on board with you from the minute they may have clicked on your website to the entire time when you register online, to the time that you come on the day itself to find the instructions where you are, then the greeting, the entire thing. So it journeys through. So when I define onboarding, right, it's the first experience with you. So like what Shaily says, the touch points, the online touch points, the offline touch points, if it's so later, it's so very, very inconvenient to register with you, that isn't what is counted as one of the experience. They don't want to, they probably, so much paperwork, I don't want to do it anymore. I am so terrible, they ask me so many questions, I don't want to do it anymore. So you need to strike a balance. I think experience is really important, but we need to think about it online, offline, and then where does the onboarding experience end? I think that's the question I will pose it back to all of you.
In fact, Grace, if we have the time, I wanted to share the welcome approach. You know, why that connected with me is like, if you remember our Mentimeter word cloud, the two big words which came for onboarding were orientation and welcome. You know, so at the beginning of a session when everybody was participating in the Mentimeter, the two big words in the word cloud came were orientation and welcome. And I just thought this slide was so appropriate because truly, if you look at it in this slide, we're talking about how to welcome your new joiners, new people joining the community. So I typically, whenever anybody is joining my team, and especially now it's become so much more easier with WhatsApp, I would kind of immediately write an introductory message or a welcome message that how I couldn't wait to, join hands with you or to have you as a part of my team to, deliver our purpose. And showing that my own personal excitement and enthusiasm through a WhatsApp or through an email is something which I do on the day one. Like the minute person gets up in the morning and is getting ready to come to work to join my team, the first message they would see is my message, my WhatsApp message from them that, there is somebody eagerly waiting for me. I'm welcomed in this place, right? I typically, in a corporate world, what happens is we tend to forget the new joiner. We have our weekly meetings, we have our monthly meetings, and we haven't introduced the person as a part of that cohort. It's only when you go in the meeting and say, hey, where is that new joiner? Why isn't he not there in this briefing meeting? Because of your own mistake that you haven't added the person in the meeting. And the new joiner is thinking, oh, I'm still not part of the in circle. They're all meeting in a meeting room, having a debriefing, and I've not been invited, which actually was a mistake, frankly, But the new joiner has already crossed you in his mind that I'm not a part of the in circle. So how do you proactively make sure that whatever your monthly or periodic schedules are, you've invited the person? In these meetings, make sure you give an airtime to the new joiner to be able to introduce themselves with their special skills. There is one way that I would introduce, I'll say, oh, she's Grace, she does this. But Grace wants to tell something which is unique about her to the team. that I love singing or I love doing something. She has her own way to connect with them. Allow her that airtime, the way she wants to present herself, And again, in that one-on-one meeting, please communicate the goals or the purpose for why we are together. What is the expectation from you as a volunteer? What is the standard operating procedures here, for you to be delivered as a volunteer here? If possible, many a times you're very busy, it's very difficult for them to keep coming back to you. Shaily, how do I do this? So can you kind of assign a friend or a buddy that can constantly keep guiding you? Okay, click here, do this. This is what this acronym means. This is what we do on Mondays. Certain things which are not written down and which are very innocuous, you can at least talk to a friend and get an answer. Manage cultural alignment is extremely important for me. Very easy to say this is not how we do things here, or this is not us. We are different. I think that's a very arrogant statement. And by this, you're alienating your new joiner. Constantly look for familiarity, the similarities, and say, oh, this is a great point. Let's see how we can take this and how we can make this work here, instead of saying, oh, this is not how it works here, right? And engage frequently, because they would be a little overwhelmed. They may not want to bother you and come to you again and again, but you may want to set up your weekly meetings proactively. Hey, how was your first week? How was your experience? What could we do differently? Catch them fresh with their fresh ideas and make them feel that their participation is important for your cause. Engage with them frequently. And this is what I call as a welcome. If you remember this welcome, probably you'll be able to integrate them better in the society. Grace?
Shaily. I see lots of conversation happening in the chat too. So if anyone has additional thoughts, feel free to add in. I'm just gonna pick up some thoughts that were shared in the chat, the importance of gathering feedback from volunteers as well about the experience so as to know how to do better. And yeah, the importance of making volunteers feel valued. Woon, I have a question for you. Like, how else, based on, building on from this slide, do you have any other tips of how to onboard new joiners?
I think it's going back to when I join an organization, right? Usually I look at the people. If the people are welcoming, like you say, they treat me real and everything else, it's the human touch, it's the tips again. So although all the things we need to do, we really need to do, because in Singapore, we are always talking about being effective, efficient, we need to be able to get into the role straight away. But the human touch of it is one of the key things. Connecting with people is something that is very difficult, right? So that's the part. If you are able to connect with the person, you'll be able to then help the person to do what you need to do. So I also share with people, let me help you help others, right? So if I actually do that with that mindset also, just now I mentioned, right, when I start in the conversation, your mindset will frame the way that you onboard people and how you actually support them throughout the journey. So if I actually have the mindset that these are my people, okay, that's one. Number two is, let me help you help others. So whatever you need, I will always be there. So if I observe that you're a bit awkward, I'll try to make you feel welcome. And then I think there was conversation to say that there is all the different level of TLCs, right, that we need to give. So we as a person, we need to essentially, from the organization perspective, we need to observe different characters, and then we have to apply different sort of techniques to onboard them as well. The onset, there will be standard procedures of how we do it, but there's always back to the personal touch. So I actually emphasize a lot, but you can't do it all by yourself. So what I do is I get my volunteers who are regular ones, then they become the facilitators and they become the face. One of the things that we do is the people will be wearing the same T-shirt. We're called the green people. I don't know whether you noticed just now in the pictures. We are all wearing the same color. Everybody wears the same. Everybody is treated the same. Everybody will have to look for every new joiner come in, right? They will be given a T-shirt to feel that they're part of the team, right? And then once they feel part of the team, and then you have everybody trying to, that's eliminating first the difference. Second, then after you're treated like one of them, and with the mindset of all my facilitators or my people who actually try to welcome them, okay, they will feel that it is they feel that they're part of the family. So again, back to the type of culture you want to create. Because we're dealing with people, it's very tough. We're dealing with people. I always tell everybody, I think the volunteer managers are not given a lot of credit, right? Because they think it's just administrative stuff. It's not. It's a lot of work. It's almost like you are the HR people of the entire company. You need to set it right. You need to set the tone right. You need to actually get the culture right. So quite a number of things that you need to do.
Yeah, a big part of volunteer management is actually HR, right? Which is something that I don't think people really realize, that almost like a scope of being a volunteer manager is doing so much HR with your volunteers. Because unlike a company where your staff, like these are your, not staff, but your volunteers.
So sometimes we can connect better with some people, right? And sometimes we can't connect. So we always find the person who can connect the people. So we get the gang leader, so to speak. And then after that, they have the whole entire clique. They will enjoy it so much so that they will ask, you divide and conquer. You can't do everything yourself. So essentially, you just need to have people to be on board with you with the same kind of mindset. And then after that, they will welcome everybody else the same, and they form the cliques. And then they will, all you need to activate, instead of 100 people, now you probably do 10. Right, and then everybody else, then that's where the culture starts to seep in, and then everybody starts to build the culture together.
One thing if I can add here is from my experience is make sure that, again, the purpose is there and we all are sticking by it, right? Or in my case, like if I'm talking about my experience, do not dilute it for your conversation with the volunteers is also important. Be respectful to the ones that showed up, and be respectful to the ones that do not want to be part of the organization. And that's absolutely fine as well. So again, an example, when we onboard folks in the BHP Singapore community, we tell them they have to lead one event in the next financial year. It's a must, right? So again, as I said, we don't use the word KPI on that, but there is a requirement, right? You can come up with the initiatives that are already in the calendar, or you find your own initiative. If you're really passionate about a cause or a charity organization or a support structure, bring it on, right? We will support it, but everyone needs to lead one item. If someone actually comes back and say, actually, you know what, I don't think I'm able to commit because of my work related requirements, that's okay. Wait, right? You can join it when you think you have time for that. So there are certainly people who would want to do 5 or 6 or 10. That's perfect. But then having that base expectation is important. And it had happened with me even in the last couple of months, that a couple of volunteers where I was having my one-on-one induction, they actually said, no, we don't want to join this because of the requirement. I'm like, that's perfectly fine as well, because that's the exact conversation I want to have then, versus actually wondering later on whether, okay, how do I onboard this? Or actually they've onboarded, but I don't see the commitment coming in or the work we expect from them as well, right? So again, it's a cause, it's the purpose, which will come into play every time. And again, we don't have to dilute it, right? It is a difficult conversation in the beginning, but then you will realize that it's a respect to the purpose of the cause that comes in, and you will find the right people coming in. And those who come in will not only be volunteers, they'll be ambassadors. That's important as part of that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Sparsh, about how it's okay to let people go, right? If it's not a good fit as a volunteer for the specific scope or opportunities available in the organization, then that's okay too. I think it also depends on how much as you yourself as a volunteer leader or community leader wants to tailor like an opportunity for someone versus scoping a specific structure, right? And I think that's very subjective and dependent also on the community's goals in itself, or the specific way that the community chooses to organize itself. Yeah. Shaily, do you have anything on your mind?
I can see there's a lot of chat happening around ad hoc volunteerism and people who are more regular, So probably welcome as a structure may work better in a more structured environment like corporate, or more structured volunteers who are coming on a regular basis. But is that effort worth it in case of ad hoc volunteers? So I think my take here is it is more important in ad hoc volunteerism because you're looking for them to come back to you again and again. You're looking for them to become more regular with you over a period of time. While this entire welcome may look very daunting and long as a process, But from an effort point of view, if you see first one, welcome note, it's your pre-typed, pre-decided welcome note that you typically write. You have to copy, paste, just change the name and add some personal lines to it and then send it. It's just a simple WhatsApp. You anyway type some 200, 300 WhatsApp in a day. Just one WhatsApp is not a big deal, right? More often than not, the purpose of your community that you're attached with is very clear, right? So expressing goals to the people is very easy, again, to meet up with them. It's sometimes, I think the challenge is when we're not putting a thought to it, but if we sit back, take 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes of your time and say, how does your volunteer who works with you for a long term comes on board, and how does an ad hoc volunteer, what are their touch points? If you look at your ad hoc volunteers' touch points, and if you can create that experience at each of those touch points, the chances are these ad hoc guys are going to come back to you often, and they may even become regular, And that is what I think also the effort that you're looking for, right? Because that makes your life easier if the same set of people keep coming back to you.
When we talk about maybe because we are a corporate head, okay, I'll tell you, any customer email, right, is a very important email, because you never know the potential of it being able to draw in the revenues. And then from the front office, right, they just grab anybody, they will just grab. There's an opportunity there to explore. So any email that comes into the mailbox, right, we look. So from us, same thing, any opportunity or any person who comes in as an ad hoc, we don't actually, for the way that I style the volunteering work, right? Because number one, Singapore, time scarcity is a huge issue. People are so busy all the time. So for my expectation, I manage my expectations. I always make sure that I don't tell people, please commit to 6 months or 7 months or whichever. So whatever it is, the first experience must count. And then once it's really good, the ad hoc guys will come back again. Because they will say, oh yeah, I don't have time today, but I want to go and do some volunteering again. Oh yeah, the experience is very good. Let me go back to them, right? Or terrible experience. I don't want to go back anymore. So again, our experience is very important. That's why I always talk about the onboarding process. Where does it end? For me, the first experience counts. So it is true, it has to be bite-sized. I do create it as very bite-sized things so that it doesn't become daunting to people, and then so that it will be able to digest. So I don't load people with a lot of things. I make it simple the first time around, and it's like your 101, 202, 303. As you progress, you give them more information as you go along. That becomes another sort of things which is totally different. Right, so that's very important. I think there's one of the questions. I think you guys are amazing. You can see, right? Everybody is talking, having this question, and then after the community is talking about each other and sharing the experiences in the group. So the thing that I saw, one of the things that I saw, right, is I think Shaily and myself, this is a question from James. How would you tackle the challenges arising from the differences of the expectations between onboarding and the actual activities that volunteer board members are supporting or lead? Or not able to lead or support since the activities were halted and may affect their commitment level? Again, I always tell people it's the experience that counts, right? We all know it's pandemic at the moment, but once you build the relationship with them, with your volunteers, again, back to the mindset, let me help you help others. Volunteers are my people. The volunteers come in, instead of, from a HR perspective, sometimes you talk about offboarding them. But in our sense, the way that we saw it, we never offboard them. We transit them into other roles. For example, how to contain or maintain the stickiness, right, of the volunteers during this pandemic period is we can convert their roles into something else.
Or realign the new purpose. Like I'll give you an example. During pandemic, suddenly my condo was buzzing with wanting to help. So there was a lot of news around what the migrant workers wanted at that point in time. And there are many people who, because of the lockdown, were not going out, or they were even scared. They were not going out at all. So there were some 100 kgs of dates that came in because somebody donated. And that needed to be packed for Hari Raya, for the migrant workers. So the entire condo volunteered and said, I'll come and collect my chunk. I will make the bags and deliver it back to you. So then a lot of people had corporate connects. So they were sourcing tiger balms, they were sourcing shampoos, they were sourcing. So they kind of generated almost 300,000 worth of goods for the migrant workers just sitting in their house. And these were all volunteers. And I can proudly say that 3 of them got the President Award this year, for the best volunteering effort that they did. And they were all from my condominium, and they all did it sitting at home. So somewhere I think that repurpose, James, I can see that pandemic did change our life. None of us knew. It was very, very new to all of us. But thinking on your feet and see how you can realign your purpose and kind of still solicit volunteers in a different way. This need to be put some thought to.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
everybody knows, right? That time some of the volunteers, very amazing, no? They will come up to you. Do you need money? We cannot go out now, but do you need money? Yes, yes. We're not shy. I will say yes. I think we want to engage you still. So there are different interactions. It's not just giving time. So we talk about giving the SG. You have give time and you give resources as well, right? So resources itself can be time, can be money. So we try to engage them, and of course we keep them updated of the news. Like, because I work in Jalan Kokok, I'll keep them updated on Jalan Kokok. This is this news, and then so that they'll be engaged because this is a community that they care about. Then if not, I work with Liam where I'll tell them that the Akong Ama over there are doing well, they're not doing well. I need a little bit. And it's crazy because the change, right? The volunteers, when you activate them for their passion to be caring about community, it can be different ways. So it's transiting them or realigning them into different types of support that you need during that particular time. Just got to be creative and don't need to be paiseh about asking things. Right? So it's just basically, once you align them with what your purpose of the organization is, they will support you. They will not come and tell you, hey, your JD is right this way, but you actually are asking me to do that. They don't actually know because of the personal relationship you have built. Sorry, Sparsh, you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to add to this. There's amazing conversation because we had the exactly same challenge. Again, I'm coming from a corporate volunteering setup. Funds donation wasn't really a problem, but of course, funds fatigue happened. But connection to the cause was the issue for volunteers, right? And this is now I'm talking about the ad hoc volunteers, right? So I think a lot of questions are around that. So what we went down the path on last year was, okay, you can't visit a charity organization to actually work with the elderly or support them through either food donations or either painting the house because of all the measures which are coming in. But how about you exercise 30 minutes and a bento box gets donated? So we created a framework like that where actually connection to the purpose was still there. And I think exercise, again, we all realize now it became such an important part over the last 1.5 years because we've all been stuck at homes. But then that gave them a sense of purpose to actually contribute to the cause, right? So it's fascinating. It started as a very small initiative in Singapore with 20 people and leveraging Strava and all the other networks we all might be part of, but now became a global initiative across BHP, and every office has their own chapter because they're not able to go out, but they want to exercise for good causes. They want to connect to the cause, right? Which again keeps them connected to the cause, and that allows us to actually bring other communities into the corporate fold and say, okay, let's learn more about them. Let's interview a beneficiary. Let's hear, right? Because the connection is there because they are contributing in their own way, apart from just donations. And as soon as things open up again, they would love to then go back into the physical setup and support that cause as well, right? So connection becomes very important. And I think exercising in general has opened I see a lot of cycling groups here as well, which is fantastic because that also brings a purpose for a lot of passionate folks to come together.
Okay, sorry, I just you look at the community of people here, we have 100 people and over, right? Sometimes, right, if we are stopping the activities itself at this point in time, And then people want to help. Then I was like, oh, why don't you help the other organization who really needs help at this point in time? That works as well. Don't be scared of losing your volunteers. They will not go away. They will think, oh, okay, then let me go the other side and help them first. Then they will still come back and remember to come and help you still. Yeah, so it is just basically right when I'm in transiting the volunteers into different roles or different areas or different organization. In fact, it actually works when you try to connect because they want to have a passion to do good. They'll still come back to you. Hey, Leewoon, where can I do this? So a lot of my my corporates, I say, Leewoon, I have a lot of these things. Then I'll say, okay, let me help this. Well, I redirect a lot of resources to other places. So it doesn't matter whether the organization, whether they are helping you directly with the organization or somebody else, because then you start to build a community of people who want to do good. And then they will remember to redirect any resources to you in another community. So you're doing doubly.
Thanks, Leewoon. I think that's such a good closing thought to leave us all with. The idea of even channeling volunteers elsewhere, and it's not really a competition. So just to wrap up finally for this panel discussion, because I'm conscious of time, can I invite all the speakers to give like one closing thought that you would like to leave the audience with? Anyone can go first.
I can quickly go and also try to answer what Yvonne has said. She's asking about how to engage. See, everybody can be a volunteer and can contribute to society, whether it is a top management or whether it is, so some people are very good at mobilizing on the ground. They are very good mobilizers. They're very good action guys. And there are certain people who are very strategic in thinking. So, but just make sure that you leverage their strength. They're very good at connecting. They're very good at fundraising. They're very good at strategic alliances. Just whenever you meet your volunteer, figure it out what they're good at, and accordingly you'll be able to build a very engaging model with them. But what is important is to make it an engaging and meaningful model, even for your volunteers, so that they come back to you again and again. As NBPC, for us to build this as a city of good, it is extremely critical that we enroll more and more people from the society to come forward and help in this nation building. So, and all of you, 100 of you on the screen, have a critical role to play to be able to engage these volunteers with your respective organizations to build the city of good. That's my closing remark.
Thanks, Shaily.
I can go next and leave one for the finale.
Oh no.
But I'll absolutely start by actually answering Ritu's question, because I know there was a couple of threads in there. But that will be my closing remark as well around do not shy away from setting the right expectation. I think I've already said it a couple of times, but I understand when you say it 7 times, that's when it sticks in everyone's mind. So, and Ritu, that's also important in this scenario, right? I think understand from a community perspective, how would you sustain that organization? What is the bare minimum requirement for you to sustain that organization, and have a very clear discussion on the onboarding? The volunteers who really want to be part of that will understand that and will ensure that that's captured, because you're putting resources, you're putting effort, and you want to sustain that effort that comes in, right? So having that barrier of entry, low or high, depending on the cause that you're supporting, is absolutely critical. And then clearly communicating it, setting that expectation will go a long way. Hard in the beginning could be for a ground up, but then absolutely you will then attract the right kind of volunteers who will then come back again and again as part of that.
Awesome words, Sparsh. And Leewoon for our closing finale.
Oh my gosh, I should have gone first. But we really need to start with our mindset first. I think I stated and started the whole conversation with that. Your mindset will make the entire experience different. So at the end of the day, people will always stick with you. People always say, right, people will stick with the organization because of the leaders, right? Not because of the organization, correct? So all of you guys are leaders in your own community, and you play an important role. They will stick with you because of you. So I think it's time for you guys to food for thought, what kind of culture, what kind of environment you want to build so that people come in and they don't want to ever leave you, so to speak, because you guys have a huge influence on how the organization can move forward. I hope that helps. And I am sorry, last few, I think the community itself, I still say it, you guys have been amazing. You have found your answers through the sharing. And then at the same time, you see Nick is actually putting his words, not my words. I build communities, not competition. But essentially, you guys are the strength within the whole group to, you know what to do for your own communities. Let me just put it that way. But it starts from your mindset.
Thank you, Woon. And thanks once again to our awesome panelists. Now we're going to move on to some closing things, admin staff. Please, let's spend like 2 minutes giving us feedback on this session. I hope that it was meaningful for you and we would like to know what you took away from the session and also how we can do better for future sessions. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to all the questions. There was something like an influx of questions at the end. But I hope that the conversation so far have been helpful, and feel free to connect with any of the speakers. We posted their LinkedIn's. I hope y'all don't mind. I didn't ask you for permission, but we posted these LinkedIn's in the chat. Yeah, so before we go on to the next few slides, because we do have a couple more announcements to make, such as related to upcoming sessions that we have. So this session is about onboarding. The next session that we'll be having next month will actually be on leadership succession. We also have a really cool panelist, but I will only get to that slide after you fill in your feedback form. So please, 1 minute of silence, please fill in your feedback form, scan the link and fill in feedback form. Oh wait, oops. No. Okay, when the feedback form numbers look satisfactory, I shall move on to the next slide.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, Shaily.